Exposed. Written by Susanna Thompson. Narrated by Lauren Sweet. Chapter 19. The next day continued in the same wonderful way when Mason picked me up for school. Seeing him caused my stomach to flutter in anticipation of his kiss. A warm smile preceded it, and it was very brief and gentle. Even that pressing of lips together gave me a heady rush, although it was a much tamer kiss than we'd ever had before. When we arrived at school, he parked the car and pulled me into a much more thorough and passionate kiss. "I'm happy to see you too," I quipped after we finally pulled apart.
"I had to act like a gentleman when I picked you up, just in case your dad was watching," he told me. "I can't take a chance of him banning me from seeing you."
"He wouldn't do that," I said, although I had also been anxious for him to approve of Mason.
"You've never had a boyfriend before, so you don't know what he would do. I'm not taking any chances of screwing this up," he declared fiercely. I felt those butterflies in my stomach and the lightness in my chest that I used to have when I was in middle school, and imagining him asking me on a date. "You're my boyfriend?" I asked, with a touch of the innocent awe I would have had back then. "Of course I'm your boyfriend,"
he responded, looking a bit taken aback.
"I've been your boyfriend."
"That wasn't real," I said. "That was just for the bet."
"I never gave a crap about that stupid bet,"
he retorted.
"That was just a way to hold on to you, but it was real for me since the moment you kissed me. You can't tell me it wasn't real for you too, because I felt how much you wanted to kiss me. And you wouldn't tell me that you love me if it wasn't real."
With the realization that he was right, unease slithered through me. But I wouldn't entertain the thought that I had cheated on him for real, so I pushed it to the back of my mind. "I wasn't sure of your feelings," I admitted instead. "I thought you were just messing with me. I mean, you were still blackmailing me." He grimaced.
"I know I should have given that poem back to you right away, but you were so resistant to giving me a chance that I used the only thing I knew would work on you."
"I should still be mad at you for that," I said, leveling a pretend look of ire at him.
"You should still be mad at me for everything,"
he said, looking genuinely troubled.
"If any other guy had treated you that way, I'd be kicking his ass right now. But it was me."
"I can kick your ass for you," I offered teasingly, wanting to lighten the mood.
"Ooh, baby, I like the sound of that,"
he bantered back.
"Tell me more about what you want to do to my ass."
A blush crept over my cheeks as I imagined my hand sliding down over his butt as he kissed me. Mason laughed, but his gaze became heated. His voice dropped to a quietly seductive volume when he spoke.
"I didn't get to see your ass when you were naked. You were so fucking hot that I had to leave the room."
Lust shot straight down to my core, and I wanted to be naked with him again.
"Fuck, don't look at me like that."
He took an uneven breath.
"We better go in before I start making out with you right here in the parking lot."
He flung open his door and got out of the car like he really was in danger of succumbing to the temptation. The charged sexual tension between us remained even as we walked among our classmates and past throngs of students in the hallways. Giving into it, Mason pressed me back against the wall and kissed me hungrily. His breathing was as heavy as mine when he pulled back. He took a step away from me.
"Okay, wow. I need to."
He began to angle his body to turn in the opposite direction.
"I'll see you in class, okay?"
"Yeah," I managed, still feeling intoxicated by that kiss. I watched him walk off down the hallway and vaguely thought about going to my locker.
"Are you giving him blue balls now?"
My stomach plummeted as I turned to face the guy who had spoken. His gaze was hard, nothing at all like it usually was.
"That was all just for show, right?" Josh mocked me.
I glanced around nervously, but nobody seemed to be paying any attention to us. My gaze returned to him. "Things have changed. I'm sorry," I added, although he really didn't deserve it, now that I knew how he had treated Erin. He smiled, apparently amused.
"I'm not making you choose, Ella. You didn't have to lie to me to get something on the side."
"I wasn't lying to you," I insisted. "We weren't together like we are now." He shrugged.
"It doesn't matter to me one way or the other."
"Then what was all that about not going behind his back?" I demanded. He shrugged again.
"That was how you came at me with it, so I played along. Now I know that I don't have to pretend with you anymore."
"Right," I agreed carefully. "Because we're not
keeping it a secret anymore?"
He interrupted me with false surprise. I stared at him as dread spread through me. The look in his eyes told me that he knew he had me.
"I don't think it's a good idea to tell him, Ella. Do you?"
"Josh," I said, not knowing how to appeal to him for his silence. He didn't smirk or mock me or make any more veiled threats.
"Once,"
he told me in a straightforward manner.
"And then it will stay a secret."
He walked away like the matter was settled. I stood there in utter horror until panic began to set in, and I walked quickly toward the exit in a mindless rush to flee from the situation. The sound of the warning bell brought me back to my senses as I realized that I couldn't just leave school. I would be marked absent, and the office would notify my parents. Mason was also expecting to see me in class and would want to know why I wasn't there. I had to act normal until I figured out a way to deal with this. Maybe Alice could help me, I thought hopefully, until I remembered that she had advised me to tell Mason everything. I knew that she would just encourage me to tell him myself before Josh did, but I couldn't see him taking it well, especially after he had insisted that our relationship had been real the entire time. He would view it as cheating, and it was starting to feel that way to me, too. The guilt that twisted in my gut, along with the anxiety when I saw him waiting for me outside the classroom, was a strong indicator of it, and it got worse when he smiled at me. Class failed to distract me from the panic that was building inside of me. "Let's get out of here," I pleaded desperately as we left the classroom. He was startled by my plea.
"Why? What's wrong?"
he asked in concern. "Nothing," I told him as I willed myself to calm down. I took a shaky breath and moved closer to him. "I just can't focus on anything. I want to be alone with you." The heat flaring in his eyes was able to actually distract me enough for my desire to be with him to be more than just wanting to escape from Josh.
"I'm having the same problem,"
Mason said.
"But it's probably not a good idea to be alone right now."
I knew that he was right, and that I shouldn't make any rash decisions. I'd already learned that lesson the hard way with Josh. Even so, I was desperate to get away somewhere with Mason. Leaving him behind would make me paranoid about Josh talking to him. "We can go to my house," I suggested. "My mom is home, so that will keep us from going too far." He gave me a perplexed look.
"Won't she mind that you're skipping school?"
"No," I answered. "She'll think that I finally have a life. Besides, I've never skipped before."
"Okay,"
he said.
"Let's get out of here before the bell rings and somebody sees us standing here."
"Are you okay with skipping?" I asked belatedly as we hurried toward the exit.
"Yes,"
he said, as we pushed open the doors and burst outside.
"I've never skipped either."
I turned my head to look at him in surprise. "You haven't? Not even one class?"
"I had to stay out of trouble so they wouldn't call my mom, remember?"
"Oh, no," I exclaimed. We have to go back. You can't.
Relax, he urged. I've stayed out of trouble long enough for her not to flip out over this. I'll probably just get detention.
I exhaled in relief. Okay, as long as you're sure you won't have to move.
Would you miss me?
He asked in a teasing tone. I never thought I'd say this, but yeah, I would. He stopped me as I was walking toward the passenger side of his car and stood facing me with a serious expression on his face.
I deserved that.
I hadn't meant it as a dig at him, and I started to tell him so, but he interrupted me.
It's true. You would have been glad to get rid of me. As pissed as you should be at me, I'm even more pissed at myself. I wasted so much time being an asshole. But I'm going to make it up to you, Ella. I swear it.
I believe you, I told him. He smiled in response, and it was a beautiful, warm smile that gave me a warm, fuzzy feeling inside. That sense of wonderful contentment stayed with me as he drove to my house. It was easy to forget everything else when it was just the two of us. As I unlocked my front door, I wasn't even stressing about Mom flirting with Mason. She wouldn't stop me from taking him up to my room, so my plan was to keep moving and get past her as fast as possible. I came to a complete standstill, though, when I entered the house and saw her kissing our neighbor's 25-year-old son. He had her pressed up against the wall, and her legs were wrapped around his waist. He broke off the kiss when he heard us come in and turned to glance back at us with a fearful expression before setting her down. She didn't appear fazed at all as she walked toward us. "Well," she said, "I won't tell if you won't." She even smiled and gave us a wink. "Have fun, and don't do anything I wouldn't do." She followed that with a throaty laugh and walked back toward her boy toy. I stood rooted to the spot as she led the young man upstairs, apparently to continue her tryst with him.
Come on, Ella,
Mason urged me gently.
Let's go.
Still in shock, I let him take my hand and lead me back to his car. The horror was trying to seep through, but my mind blocked it out until we arrived at Mason's house. We had just stepped inside when everything came crashing down on me. "My dad," I gasped. Mason embraced me and I clung to him for support. Tears started falling down my cheeks. "I'll lose my dad," I sobbed.
No, you won't, he said. He loves you. This isn't going to change that.
I cried as he held me and ran a hand soothingly up and down my back. Eventually, my sorrow turned to anger and I pulled away in agitation. "She ruins everything," I wailed. I stomped around as bitter tears fell. "I hate her. She always ruins everything." Mason spoke in a calming tone.
It'll be okay, Ella. You're not alone. You've got me, and I'll help you make it through this.
The words must have had an effect somewhere deep inside, although I paid them no conscious attention right then. I cried and paced around until I was spent, and then I just sat on the couch, staring blankly at nothing. Mason placed a glass in my hand, and I automatically sipped the liquid inside. It was cola, and it restored some of my depleted energy. I came out of my semi-catatonic state as my eyes focused on Mason sitting across from me. "It's over," I stated emotionlessly. All the feelings seemed to have drained out of me. "I've lost my dad." Something flared in his eyes, and his composure slipped.
He's alive, he bit out. He's fucking alive, so you haven't lost him. I know you're upset, and this sucks, but your dad is still here.
His emotion penetrated the numbness separating me from him, and sympathy rushed through me. "I'm sorry, Mason. I wasn't thinking."
You're upset,
he repeated, this time as an excuse for my insensitivity. It put things somewhat in perspective. As awful as this was, nobody had died. I briefly imagined finding out that my dad was dead, and it hit me for the first time how horrible that must have been for Mason. At the time, I hadn't had a dad, so I couldn't relate to his loss on such a visceral level. I stared at him with the horrible realization of his devastating pain. "I'm so sorry, Mason. I'm so sorry about your dad." Intense emotion crossed his face, and he looked away. When his gaze returned to me, it softened.
"Thank you."
I felt something lift, some barrier that I didn't even know was between us until it was gone. A connection seemed to form between us unimpeded now, and I took comfort and strength from it. Mason stood up and came to sit beside me, angling his body toward me and taking hold of my hand.
"You'll be okay, Ella. I promise. You can stay here tonight if you don't want to go home."
"I don't," I said, unable to imagine being able to pretend like everything was normal when my dad came home from work.
"Okay,"
Mason said.
"We can go buy you a change of clothes for tomorrow and something to sleep in tonight."
"I'll ask Alice to go to my house and get clothes for me," I decided.
"You're going to tell her that you're staying here?"
he asked, looking surprised. "Yes. She won't tell anyone, and I'll say that I'm staying at her house. She'll cover for me if she needs to." He regarded me intently.
"You know that even though you haven't talked to her yet? You're that sure of her?"
"Yes," I stated unequivocally. He appeared to be puzzling over something as he studied me.
"You secretly kept up your friendship with her?"
"No," I replied. "Last week was the first time I've talked to her since I saw her in the park after Chase died, but before that, it was since freshman year."
"But you have total faith in her?" he questioned. "You have that much trust in her, even though you've hardly talked for years?"
"Yes," I said. "She's the one friend I know I can count on no matter what. Time doesn't matter with her."
"What does that mean?" he queried. "How could time not matter?"
"It means that she's still Alice, and that she's still my friend. I don't know how to explain it, but it's never gone away. I still care about her, and if she asked me to help her, I would, no matter how much time had passed since we talked. And I know that she would do the same for me. That's just how it is with us." He regarded me pensively.
"I don't have anyone like that."
"They're rare," I acknowledged. "I've never had another friend like Alice." Melancholy overtook me again. "I just got her back, and now we're going to be separated again."
"Why are you going to be separated?"
Mason asked. "When my dad finds out about my mom, he'll—"
"Who's going to tell him?"
Mason interjected. That stopped me cold. I stared speechlessly at him as I grappled with the realization that my dad didn't have to find out. He could remain completely unaware that his wife was cheating on him. But that would mean that I would have to keep the secret of what was going on behind his back. Not that I could imagine telling him, but I also couldn't fathom acting like nothing had happened. Yet what else could I do? I couldn't stand the thought of hurting him, and he would be so terribly hurt to learn of Mom's infidelity. I didn't know how she could do that to him. He was such a good husband to her, and a great father to me. What more could she want in a man? Why could she never be satisfied with what she had? Why did she have to ruin everything, everywhere she went?
"He doesn't have to know,"
Mason said.
"I know it's a shitty situation, but telling him won't make it better. You're upset, but you'll deal, and then you can just ignore it. It's only for a year, right? And then you'll be going to college."
"Yeah," I replied. "I guess."
"You guess you're going to college?"
"I guess I'll have to ignore it," I clarified listlessly. "My mother with Jeremy. Addison was always lusting after him. Guess my mom beat her to him." He said nothing in response to that, and just softly stroked his thumb over my knuckles as he continued to hold my hand. I stared off into space as my thoughts shut down, and I wasn't aware of anything until Mason asked me what I wanted for lunch. "I'm not hungry," I replied.
"Well, I am," he said, "and I'd like to get something that you might eat too. What do you prefer? I can get something delivered or go pick up some fast food for us."
"Get what you want," I told him. "I don't want anything."
"I guess I'll order pizza,"
he decided.
"It'll still be good if you feel like having some later."
I heard my ringtone go off, and I pulled my phone out of my purse. "It's Alice."
"Talk to her. I'll go get the pizza myself so you can have some privacy. Call me if you need anything."
"Okay," I said, before answering the phone. "Where are you?" Alice asked as Mason left the room. "You're going to miss lunch if you don't get here soon." I recalled that we had planned to sit together at lunch. That seemed much longer ago than yesterday. "I went home." "Why?" she questioned. I could hardly remember why now. "Something happened," I told her. "I caught my mom cheating on my dad." "What?" she exclaimed. I filled her in on everything that had happened and asked her if she could pick up some clothes for me after school. "I don't want to go back there today. I'm going to tell my parents that I'm staying over your house, if that's okay." "You can," she offered. "I can sneak you in." I knew her mom's rule about not having anyone sleeping over on school nights, and I didn't want to cause problems for her. I also didn't want to rehash everything with her tonight. Best friends were great when you needed to talk, but I didn't feel like talking. Mason hadn't pushed me to, and that was what I needed right now. "Thanks, but I'm fine here," I told her. There was a pause. "Ella," she began tentatively, "I don't think it's a good time for you to be there. I know you're upset, and you want comfort, but—" I let out a harsh laugh. "Believe me, the last thing I want right now is sex. Seeing my mom with her boy toy was not sexy. I wish I could erase it from my mind." "Of course I didn't mean it was sexy," she exclaimed in a horrified tone. "I just meant that it's natural to want comfort when you're upset, and it might just start with him putting his arms around you, and then little by little—" She trailed off before adding, "I'm just worried that he'll take advantage of you when you're vulnerable." "He won't," I assured her. "He hasn't done anything except hold my hand. He's actually been giving me my space, even though I'm in his house. That's what I need," I admitted. "So being here is perfect right now." "Okay," she said. "But you can call me to come get you if he tries anything." "He won't," I replied with total confidence. My faith in him took a nosedive that night when I couldn't sleep, and he suggested I go for a swim in his pool. I hadn't thought to ask Alice to bring my bathing suit, and I told him that.
"You don't need one," he replied. "It's dark and nobody will see you."
"Except you," I retorted, as the realization of what he was suggesting sank in. Instead of assuring me that he wouldn't look, his reply left no doubt that he would.
"I've seen you naked before."
A spark of anger ignited within me and contrarily prompted me to goad him rather than protest his inappropriateness at a time like this. "That's right. You have." I swiftly removed my pajama shorts and top right in front of him before strutting past him completely nude. Pulling open the patio door, I walked out into the darkness. I felt a sense of freedom as it swallowed me up, like I had left behind the daily world. Entering the water was a special treat at night. It was something I had never done before, and neither had I ever gone skinny dipping. I couldn't deny how sensual and forbidden it felt, but I was alone in the pool. That freed me further and relaxed me. I leaned back and gazed at the night sky as I floated in the dark silence. Awareness prickled back to life in my nerve endings, and I turned my head to see Mason at the edge of the pool. I didn't know how long he had been standing there watching me, but he lingered a moment longer before moving from his spot and diving into the water furthest away from me. My body tensed in anticipation, but he began to swim laps rather than approaching me. As the realization set in that he wasn't going to touch me, I broke my pose and started gliding through the water. We swam laps, keeping to opposite sides of the pool. I almost forgot he was there as I got into the zone of the smooth, even strokes pulling me through the water. When I finally tired and stopped, I remembered to look for him and saw that he was floating on his back now. Swimming over to him, I leaned back to float on my back beside him. After a moment of gazing at the sky, I glanced at him. It's unfair that you told me to come out here naked, but you've got your swim trunks on. We should be equal. His eyes slid down to my breasts before returning to my face.
We could never be equal. I can't compare to how beautiful you are.
You have to know how gorgeous you are, I scoffed. All the girls want you.
But I only want you,
he said. Really? I challenged. You've had other girls. Right in this pool, in fact. Isn't that what your mother said? She caught you naked in here with another girl.
That was before you,
he retorted. Well, I said blithely, even as anger roiled through me. I guess it's my turn now. Letting my body sink down into the water, I turned toward him and moved in close. I placed my hand on the top of the bulge in his swim shorts, and he hissed out a breath. Let me see it, I told him boldly.
Fuck, he swore. Stop it, Ella.
You can be naked with her, but not with me, I argued. He dropped his body into the water to dislodge my hand.
You have no reason to be jealous. I've never wanted anyone as much as—
I'm not jealous, I cut in. Everybody's having sex. I get it. You, my mother, I might as well do it too. Why the hell not?
Ella,
he said, sounding like he was struggling to speak in a patient tone.
You need to get some sleep. Go up to bed.
No, you need to get naked, I replied obstinately. I'm sick of this shit. I told you I want us to be equal. He glared at me as I stared him down.
Fine,
he said through gritted teeth. His arms moved from his sides to his front, and then back to his sides as his shoulders dipped into the water. He leaned back as his legs sprang up, and he pulled his swim trunks off his feet and flung them onto the cement surrounding the pool. I got a glimpse of what was between his legs before he submerged it beneath the water. I want to see you. Float on your back, I demanded. He let out an exasperated breath, but complied and brought his body up out of the water. I stared at his erection. There wasn't much moonlight, but there was enough for me to see the size and shape of him jutting up into the air. Without thinking, I wrapped my hand around it in curiosity to know how it felt. Mason sucked in a sharp breath.
Oh, fuck,
he groaned. It's hard but soft, I marveled as I moved my hand up to the tip. He moaned.
Ella,
he protested in a strangled voice.
Let go.
I liked the power I had discovered I had over him, so I moved my hand back down over his length to elicit another tortured moan. I lost my grip on him as he quickly dropped his body into the water and moved so fast that I found myself pressed against the side of the pool before I knew what was happening. His mouth was on mine in the next instant in a hungry, demanding kiss. Now I moaned as his tongue plunged into my mouth and his naked body pressed against mine as the sensual feel of the water enveloped my skin. Mason devoured my mouth before pulling my body out of the water to sit me on the edge of the pool in front of him. Before I could completely register the cool air on my wet skin, his hot mouth closed over my nipple. I moaned as my head fell back in surrender to the intensely pleasurable sensation. As he continued to suck on my nipple, I felt his hand touch me between my parted legs, and I stiffened. I pushed against his shoulders, and he stopped immediately and pulled away from me.
"Shit," he exclaimed. "I'm sorry."
I took a shaky breath. "I want to," I said, but the insistence was gone from my voice.
"Go to bed," he pleaded. "Please, Ella."
This time, I left without arguing. As I got up, he turned away from me, and he didn't look up from the water as I made my way around the pool. With a final glance at him, I walked away toward the house. My back prickled, and I imagined that I could feel his eyes on me, but I resisted the urge to look back and see if he was looking at me. He didn't follow me into the house, and I was relieved to be alone again. When I reached the bedroom he had put me in, I saw my pajama top and shorts laid out on the bed. Remembering that I had dropped them on the floor when I had stripped them off in the kitchen, I realized that Mason must have picked them up and brought them to my room for me. It was considerate, I noted absently, as I thought about taking a shower. Deciding that I needed to wash the chlorine off, I walked back out into the hall and down to the bathroom where I had taken a shower earlier in the evening. It wasn't until I was standing under the warm spray of water that what had happened in the pool came back to me in vivid detail. Embarrassment warred with arousal within me. I couldn't believe how I had acted, but remembering how everything had felt was incredibly erotic. I nearly gave in to the sudden ache between my legs before realizing that Mason was probably in his room just down the hall by now. I couldn't masturbate in his house, with him so nearby. Embarrassment flooded through me again, and I hurried up and finished showering. Wrapping a towel around me, I walked out into the hallway and halted when I saw Mason walking toward me from the direction of the stairs. His eyes swept over me before he fixed a heated look on my face. I clutched the towel tucked into my cleavage as he approached me. His swim trunks were back on his body, but I was keenly aware of what was beneath them. My pulse jumped in anticipation of what he would do now, but he surprised me.
"Did you leave me any warm water?"
he asked in a playful, teasing tone. I responded. "I think so."
"If you keep standing here in that towel, I'm going to need to take a cold shower anyway,"
he said, as his eyes dropped to my cleavage. My breath hitched, and his gaze snapped back up to mine.
"Are you turned on again, too?"
he asked in a sultry tone. "Again?" I repeated as I blushed. Surprise flashed in his eyes.
"Didn't you get off in the shower?"
My eyes widened as my blush deepened. "No!" I exclaimed in a scandalized tone, like I hadn't been tempted to do what he had just said.
"Why not?"
he questioned. "Because," I huffed, without explaining further. Sidestepping him, I took off toward my room. His low laugh was followed by a taunting parting.
"Good night, Ella. I'm going to get off in the shower now."
"I don't care," I threw back at him. That was a lie, because I was imagining him in the shower as I put on my pajamas and tried to go to sleep. I remembered how he had reacted when I gripped him and moved my hand up and down, and I knew that he was probably doing that. He was in there naked beneath the spray of water. I rolled onto my side and tried to push that thought out of my mind. I did manage to drift off to sleep, and I only realized in the morning how much Mason had distracted me from my depressing thoughts about my mom cheating on my dad. Daylight brought back the realization that I would have to go home today.
"I wish you could stay here,"
Mason told me, echoing my thoughts. "Me too," I said.
"We can get an apartment together at college," he suggested. "Where are you planning to go?"
That shook me out of my subdued state, and I stared at him, my uneaten cereal forgotten. "You want to live with me?"
"Yeah,"
he replied, like it was obvious.
"I'd rather live with you than some annoying roommate. Don't tell me that you would rather live in some tiny college dorm than in your own apartment."
"You're planning to be with me in college?" I asked, completely stunned.
"Well, yeah. We just got together, and I don't want to be separated from you so soon. You don't have to move in with me, of course, but it would be great if you did."
I was still trying to wrap my mind around this. "You think you'll still want me after high school?" He seemed taken aback.
"Why wouldn't I?"
"I just thought—" I trailed off uncertainly, and his gaze sharpened.
"You thought what?"
My eyes looked past him as my hand ran nervously back and forth over the smooth tabletop in front of me. "I don't know."
"You don't know?"
he demanded.
"You obviously thought something, and I want to know what it is."
I shrugged helplessly, and my gaze lowered to the table.
"Look at me,"
he commanded. I slowly lifted my eyes to meet his intense stare.
"What do you think this is?"
he questioned.
"I asked you to be my girlfriend. This isn't just some casual hookup. I let you stay over my house, and nobody does that. I'm here for you, Ella. Do you get that?"
I got that fluttery feeling, but it was tempered by caution. "Yeah," I agreed, just to end the discussion. He exhaled heavily and leveled his gaze on me again.
"Are you planning to break up with me, Ella? Is that why you can't see us together in college?"
"You said that I'm not allowed," I replied. He stiffened, and his expression froze for a moment before settling into complete neutrality.
"You're allowed now,"
he said.
"Break up with me if that's what you want."
Everything in me stilled as his words reached me through my apathetic fog. They brought me back to full awareness and to the realization that something was happening right here, right now.
"It's your decision, Ella,"
he said, his neutral expression giving way to an intent look that underscored his words.
"I'm not forcing you to stay with me. I just wanted you to give me a chance. But I don't want you to stay with me another minute if you don't want to."
I wanted to retreat from this conversation and not deal with anything right now, but his gaze held mine insistently. "Can't we talk about this later?" I pleaded.
"There's nothing to talk about. You either want to be with me or you don't. Which is it?"
he demanded. I wrung my hands in agitation at being put on the spot. "Mason," I protested.
"Answer me, Ella. Do you want to break up with me?"
He leaned in closer over the table with a fierce look.
"No more blackmail, no more bullshit. It's all up to you. I just want to know how you feel. Do you want to be with me?"
I exhaled slowly before answering him. "Yes." His expression became guarded as he pulled back.
"Yes to which question?"
"Yes, I want to be with you," I told him in exasperation. A happy smile spread across his face, and he sprang up out of his chair. Coming up behind me, he leaned down and wrapped his arms around my waist as he pressed a kiss to the top of my head.
"Eat your breakfast,"
he urged.
"We have to leave for school soon."
It felt wonderful to have his arms around me, and I still felt that warm comfort as he let go and left to get ready. Finishing my breakfast, I cleared the table and placed our bowls and spoons in the dishwasher before going upstairs to brush my teeth. Mason and I didn't talk during the drive to school, but the atmosphere between us was mellow and content. The classical music he chose to put on was also soothing and calming. It allowed my mind to drift smoothly without the distraction of words. Once we left the serene cocoon of his car, the noise of the other cars and students in the school parking lot intruded upon my peaceful state of mind. I wanted to escape from all of it again and steal away with Mason, but I couldn't keep cutting school. Then I saw Josh and remembered everything that had happened with him, and my blood ran cold.